In this video, I'm going to look at a couple of interesting things you can do with the partial screenshot macro. I'm going to use it to solve a particular problem I've got. Now, I've got a very simple example here where I'm selecting something through the menu. I select something on the system menu, then the next step I select the submenu, and then the third step I select the submenu. Now, by default, Enable Now will always capture that as 3 actions. What I don't like about that is if I go and look at that in the documentation that's generated, and I'll just quickly generate that now. If I display this, it basically treats each of those as a separate action, as it should, but what's worse is it does each one as a separate step. So I've got my step 1 here of 1.1.1 where I select the menu, and that's got a step action table with 1 step in it. Step 2 is another step, and that has 1 step in its action table, and then the third one, the same thing. I don't really like that. What I'd really like is all 3 of these to be on a single screenshot. Now, I could just hide these the second and third screenshots, and it will put them all in the same table, but I'm not going to see these expanded menus then because I'm only looking at the first screenshot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an additional screenshot right in this third step, because this has got the screen that has got all of the menus on it, and that's really what I want in the documentation. So I go to Insert, Documentation Macro, and Partial Screenshot. Now that lets me crop what area I want. As long as I make sure that I've got all of the menus in there and all of the action areas, that should be good. I'm going to crop it all the way down, save that. Now that's given me a partial screenshot right in here in the step I created it for. Now, interesting thing to notice with this is that the partial screenshot macro has a source property. This MAC3953 something or other is actually the identifier of this screenshot. You can see I've got exactly the same thing in here, which means that this partial screenshot is tied to this screen macro and not necessarily to this step. That's very handy because it means I can now drag this and put it right into my first step here. And this will still show the correct thing and not actually the screenshot for this step. Now this is a screenshot I want, so I can now hide this screenshot in the first step. I can hide this one as well, and I can hide this third one. So now the only thing that appears in the documentation for these 3 steps is my partial screenshot. So there's one important thing to watch out for here, and that is this show actions property on the partial screenshot. I need to select this so that it will show the subsequent actions on these 3 steps in that same step and against that partial screenshot here. There's a couple of other things that we're going to need to fix, but let me show you what that looks like first. I'm going to generate exactly the same document, and we'll see what that gives for us now that we've hidden those 3 screenshots and we've put in our own partial screenshot. Again, I'm just going to display that and show you what it looks like. Now we're nearly there. I've got a screenshot. This is my partial screenshot. You can see it's a bit small here. SAP Enable Now never seems to get the default right on that, but it's an easy thing to fix. And then you can see that I've got these 3 steps all in the same table. And you can see they've actually got all got their own identifiers on the screenshot. Now, a couple of things to watch out for. One, the screenshots are wrong size, but the other is that I don't have a heading for this. This level 2 heading is actually the heading of my recording, and this one is the level 3 heading is the next step. So it's basically removed that heading for me. And the reason it does that is because it figures that if I don't want the screenshot in there, it's not going to provide the heading, which makes sense on the second and third ones because we'd want it to use the same heading. But here, because I'm hiding the very first screenshot, I'm missing something. That's easy to fix. I can basically insert a documentation macro of a heading, and this needs to be a heading level 3 as we saw from the documentation, and I'm just going to call it select the menu option, and I will save that. Now I do need to make sure that's above this first screenshot. The other thing I'll fix now is the size of that screenshot of our partial screenshot. The easiest way to do this is if I go to the documentation view, here I can see how small it is, and unfortunately it's a bit of trial and error, but basically I can come into here and I can say push it up to maybe 90%, and see what that looks like. Still not quite big enough. Let me set it to 100 and I'll leave it full size and it'll still be cropped a bit, but that will look okay. So now if I generate this document, what I will see is that I should have a heading for it, which says select the menu option, which is at the right level. The screenshot should be the right size, and then I'm going to have a single step table with my 3 actions in it. And there it is. So this is my heading, this is my screenshot, and I've got my 3 steps in there. Obviously there's a bit of tidying up to do where it's not identified the names here, but one more thing that we'll look at. Here you can see that the system, the action area there is not quite lined up with the blue thing. So let's go and fix that. Again, I am in the documentation view and I can drag this and resize this or any of these, any action areas on the documentation view, and it's not going to affect the action area in demo mode or in practice mode. It's not actually changing that control area, it's just changing where this border appears in the documentation. And that's it. That's a nice easy use of both the partial screenshot macro. Just remember, select that show actions one if you actually want these on there, and using a header to make sure that it forces a header where we need it to. That's it. Hope you enjoyed that. Tune in again for another one.